Trade rumors revolving around the New York Rangers are continuing to escalate, and it seems as if they have made their decision on their captain and his future in New York, and there are a lot of teams interested in his services. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel, so if you want to do yourself a favor, it's free. Hit that subscribe button and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers, and what a great start to the season it is for the New York Rangers. But today we are going to be talking about some trade rumors, some trade reports, new reports coming out from some notable insiders on Jacob Trouba and his future in New York, or lack thereof, I should say. So let's dive right into it. Let's waste no time. And this is from Greg Wyshynski of ESPN. And Jacob Trouba has no animosity with the Rangers coming into this season, despite the trade rumors. Obviously, there was a lot of noise during the summer. They tried to trade him to the Detroit Red Wings. As soon as he got wind of that, he put them on his no trade list, his new modified no trade list. And we're going to get into his contract and the specifics in a second and why it looks like the Rangers are going to move off of him. But here's a quote from Jacob Trouba himself about the summer. "I don't think there was any animosity throughout the whole thing. Per my contract, I owe the list to them on June 30th. I knew that was coming. I think that's pretty standard, or a pretty standard part of contracts. When a no trade list has to be submitted, there's a date that has to be done by. It's just standard contract business." And of course, he was able to veto a trade essentially to the Detroit Red Wings, his home state that he didn't want to go back to, because he wants to stay with the New York Rangers this year to win a Stanley Cup. And Trouba expressed some frustration about the speculation surrounding his future with the Rangers, saying there's a lot of things that were said and snowballed. He mentioned media reports about his wife, Dr. Kelly Tyson Trouba, who now her residency at the New York hospital might have been impacted by potential trade destinations. That's a big factor into all of this. The reason Jacob Trouba, and we'll get to it here, his contract breakdown, and we're going to get into some other stuff shortly as well. If you look at his contract year by year after it was signed in 1920, he had a full no move clause, I should say, until this past offseason, where it turned into a modified no trade clause, which he had to submit a list of 15 teams he did not want to be traded to, Detroit being on that list as he got wind of him possibly being traded there. The reason is the residency for his wife was supposed to expire basically this summer. It did not. It got extended for another year, so he did not want to get traded. So as soon as he found out he might be on his way to Detroit, he put them on his no trade clause. And you can't blame the guy. It's in his contract. He's allowed to do that. But it sounds like, with that coming up this season, it looks like he might be open to a trade coming up this offseason. And it looks like the Rangers are probably going to have to deal him. I mean, they just signed Lafreniere to a very affordable contract, by the way, but a very rich contract nonetheless. Where are they going to find that money? They're going to have to free up about $8 million off the cap to afford Lafreniere going forward. Not just him. They got to re-sign Keandre Miller as well. Shesterkin's demanding a lot of money, right? We have no idea what's going to happen with that. So they have to free up some salary. It looks like Jacob Trouba could be on his way out of New York this offseason, as soon as this offseason. This is from Phil as well. The New York Rangers are positioned to have, through the process, $6 million or so by the time they get to the trade deadline. So I think you're going to see yet again an aggressive trade deadline from Chris Drury. And I'm not saying he's going to trade Jacob Trouba. I do think Jacob Trouba is going to, be a New York Ranger for the whole year. He wants one last shot at the Stanley Cup here with the New York Rangers. But, Chris Drury did a pretty good job with some flexibility this year. So credit where credit is due. And in terms of who could trade for Jacob Trouba, according to Darren Dreger, who was on TSN Insider Trading, there were 20 teams interested in Trouba. Of course, Detroit being one of them. We don't know how many of the 20 teams that were interested are on Jacob Trouba's no trade list. Presumably 15 of them, but at this point in time, we don't know how many. But it sounds like at least this summer he might be more open to being traded. And the fact that there's 20 teams interested in Jacob Trouba is pretty crazy for the New York Rangers heading forward. It looks like they're going to be able to find a trade partner. They're going to have to free up that salary, and I think a lot of teams would like Jacob Trouba on their blue line. He's a very physical presence. Again, with the screenshot, as you can see here, definitely a physical presence. And, Jacob Trouba went on to say, and I thought this was a very interesting quote, I think he knows that the writing is on the wall, and this could be his last season as a New York Ranger, and he would be more open to being traded at the end of this season. He went on to say, in all likelihood, it will probably be my last crack for this core, or it will probably be the last crack for this core. I don't think that's a secret by any means. We're a group that's grown together, spent some years together here, and we have something we want to accomplish. They want to win the Stanley Cup, and I think he knows, especially as captain, everything that goes into that. This could be his last season as a New York Ranger. He wants to get the job done. He wants to bring the Stanley Cup back to New York, and I think he knows that he is on his way out after this season. He also goes on, he's very understanding, right? I think the majority of the reason why he wanted to stay in New York and he's blocked trades and used his no movement clause and his modified no trade clause is, because of the residency, right? He wants to stay in New York, but after that's done, he's very family oriented. After that's done, I could see him being open to a trade. And he said, that's life, contracts, hockey business, whatever you want to call it. I knew it was coming. I can get traded now. I know that. I knew that when I signed the contract at that moment. So seems very understanding of that. And, if we take a look, heading into the future and what a lot of Rangers fans are saying at the D pairing, if you take Jacob Trouba out of this equation, you still have Zach Jones there. A lot of Rangers fans are assuming, we don't know what's going to happen with Ryan Lindgren either, but Jacob Trouba, a lot of fans are just plugging in Victor Mancini with the way he's been playing. And yes, he's still young and inexperienced, but a lot of Rangers fans are saying, Victor Mancini's a guy who can come in and kind of take over Jacob Trouba's role into the future, kind of grow into that spot. And the rest of the defensive pairings will basically look the same. You got Zach Jones there as well. There's a bit of a logjam this year because Trouba is clearly, obviously, still here as captain. Ryan Lindgren's still here. We don't know, like I mentioned, what happens in the future with that. He signed a 1-year extension. If he demands too much money, maybe they move off of him as well. But the future does look bright in terms of Zach Jones. Right now, obviously not in the lineup. He's acting as the 7th defenseman, but that's still a very skilled player, an NHL player, I think, in my eyes. And again, you don't know what's going to happen with Ryan Lindgren. So a bit of a logjam right now, but presumably with Jacob Trouba coming out, you would have Victor Mancini taking over that spot. But at the end of the day, it looks like, with 20 teams interested and the fact that Trouba, at least at the end of this season I'm talking about, seems a little bit more open to being traded. I think it's very likely with all of the new contracts that have to be renewed. Miller, obviously, Lafreniere is getting almost $8 million now a year. You're going to have to sign Shesterkin, or, it sounds like they've made their decision, right? They gave him a contract offer. He rejected it. Sounds like they want to re-sign Shesterkin. It's going to cost a lot of money one way or another, so they're going to have to free up some salary. So the team is going to look a little bit different, and it seems like Jacob Trouba at the end of this season will no longer be a New York Ranger. It looks like he will be dealt to make way for some of the younger talent. But let me know in the comments what you think of the whole Jacob Trouba situation. If you do think this is his last year in New York, and you know what, he has been a pretty good captain, and he does bring the physical edge or a physical side to his game that I think the Rangers lack in some areas, and most teams do right now. So there is that. But let me know what you think in the comments, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.